The next speaker is Inez Ponce de Leon. Sounds like an ilustrado. Ilustrada. Well, the title is Faith in the Facts. Local Researchers' Perspectives on Science Communication in the Philippines. And Inez is right now a PhD candidate at Purdue University. And she used to be with NIMBB in UP Diliman.
Okay, everyone, good afternoon. I know I'm the last speaker, so I'll do my best to be as entertaining, exciting, and illustrado as possible. Again, good afternoon. And as Dr. Wadley said, yes, I used to be part of the National Institute of Molecular Biology and Biotechnology of UP Diliman. And I was with Ponce. I was in Ponce 10 years ago when you were at the Shangri-La Maccabi. And I presented my research on forensic molecular biology. And it was so exciting for me because I got to showcase my research for the first time and feel like a scientist. 5 years later, I also graduated from my master's with a degree in molecular biology. And my work was in wildlife conservation for Philippine endemic species. So it was all very labby and very sciencey. But while I was doing this, I was also doing something else. I was caught in the middle of the GMO controversy in the Philippines. And for those of you who were there, and for those of you who remember, BT corn was just being introduced into Asia. The Philippines was the first to adapt BT corn. And when that happened, all hell broke loose. The farmers came out, the NGOs came out, Greenpeace came out. And there were just so many arguments. And right in the middle were the scientists. And I was part of a group from the National Institute of Molecular Biology and Biotechnology, UP Diliman, that decided to go out and talk about what we knew about genetically modified organisms, about genetics, about DNA, about the advantages of science. But I found out two different things as this happened. First, scientists who were in the same lab as me, sometimes in the same institute as me, did not like to communicate. And sometimes it wasn't because they didn't like talking or couldn't talk. It was because they felt that if they were in the lab, that's what they were supposed to do and they didn't need to step out. And sometimes some people even looked down on scientists who were communicating because they thought that we were mavericks or we were talking about research that didn't have any basis yet. And then I thought people would listen to me because I was an exciting speaker. And it turns out no one liked me. Well, some people liked me, but the farmers didn't. And I got shouted at. And I came out of so many conferences and meetings crying because farmers would always ask me, how can you sleep at night when Monsanto pays you to do this? And that hurt. And then I thought, what's wrong with me? Is it because I'm a scientist that people won't listen? Why don't people listen? Or what makes people listen to scientists? And that's when I thought, maybe my work isn't here in the laboratory. Maybe it's outside the laboratory. So I literally stepped out and stepped away, came to Purdue University. And I would like to take you on that journey with me as I asked, what makes the science communicating scientist special? Because I had to think, if some scientists don't communicate and some scientists do, what makes them step out? What makes people listen to them? What makes people shut their ears and shut them out? So I decided to do my work on scientists, and specifically scientists in the Philippines, simply because we are the Ilustradas and we're special. Now, science communication is, of course, critical. I mean, this goes without saying. I've been through a lot of issues in the Philippines already, and this includes your usual run-of-the-mill GMOs, your health issues, especially with the floods, and the natural disasters. You can't help having mosquitoes and bugs and different viruses and bacteria that just flutter around and infect people, and people need to know. They need to know how to protect themselves, how to go through a natural disaster without panicking and still thinking critically. Science communication has become critical. But I'd also like to step back, and I invite you to step back with me. Let's think for a moment. Can we actually define, as we sit in our seats, what is science communication? Because it is hard to define. First, you have to ask yourself, how much science should I communicate? What kind of science? Do I tell them all about the molecular structure of DNA and talk about the phosphate backbone? Not everyone can understand that. I find that fascinating. And what do we want science communication to do? What exactly is our goal? When I stepped into the science communication field, I really thought it would be easy, because I spent 9 years as a molecular biologist doing PCR 5 times a day. And I thought it would be a different place. Turns out it's almost the same. It's like writing a giant lab report every day. You have one big objective, and in order for you to get to your very end goal and meet that goal well, you have to know your theory well, you have to have very clear objectives, and you have to know what you want to accomplish, or you just end up with a lot of trash data. So, in stepping back, I also did this. I also found that there are advantages to setting the bounds, to defining what science communication is all about. One of these is we will be able to have more focused communication efforts. And I never knew how important this was until I started working at the International Service for the Acquisition of Agri-Biotech Applications in Laguna. I have a propensity for going to places with long names. And we did science communication, and we spent millions of pesos. It costs a lot to do science communication. If you have to do it, might as well do it well and do it efficiently. By focusing a science communication effort, then perhaps we would be able to communicate science better. More than that, we would also need to have more focused communication policies. How much do we communicate? Who's in charge of communicating? What should scientists do? And how should scientists collaborate? And this is my favorite part, because when I was working as a science communicator, I felt that I was the one tasked to do all the work. But as I grew older and more and more, and knew more and more, I realized that I have to pair up with social scientists, with the scientists themselves in laboratories, government, corporations, industry, people with money, and people who knew how to communicate, how to step out and let people listen. So, now that I have all of these, there's also one more goal for science communication, and I believe all of you know about this. It's for recruitment. If people do get great science communication, sometimes it's a great invitation for them to come into science. And once they come into science and they see that more people are into science, then what do we get? Funding. So science communication could actually be a pretty good ticket for getting research done. So work in this area so far has been in how scientists have communicated. And it turns out that most scientists work in a deficit model. Now, what is this deficit model? It's pretty much the model I used to work in UP NIMDB. We believed that the scientists had all the knowledge. And because we knew the science, we had the mandate to share it with people, to give people that knowledge. And if people had the knowledge, then they would act accordingly. So if they knew what GMOs were all about, we assumed that they would accept GMOs. We found it to be very straightforward. However, as I kept on doing this, I also realized that it's also very one-way. We have all the knowledge, so we're going to give it to you. Here, take it. No, take it. You're not giving it back. No, take it. You're listening. It's very forceful. It's like holding people's heads underwater and expecting them to listen to you. And work in this area, research in this area has also shown that not all scientists are willing and or able to communicate. Some scientists are great at communicating. I have listened to scientists who are so cool to listen to, but in the end you walk out and you're just so confused because you don't know what the heck you just heard. There are also scientists who are not great communicators, but they are just great researchers. And sometimes they can't talk about their research well, but in their element, sometimes with the right amount of liquor, they can really talk. And I have met scientists who I've heard a lot from, who I've learned a lot from, sometimes by being just across the bar or the